With all the success you've had, do you still face, are you currently facing any fears, or are there fears about the horizon?
Man, I have to give you amazing props. You're such a curious person about the people that you talk to. I love it. I love it, man.
Thank you.
The answer is, thank you. Are you kidding me? I've been on a ton of podcasts and people just same questions.
Welcome to the Idea Climbing Radio Show. Today we're talking about how to broadcast your next big idea. And I've got some awesome people here. We've got Steele and Ernelita, Ernie Dacumos, who are both certified speakers, coaches, facilitators, and trainers through the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. They jointly established the international radio show, The Leader's Edge, on the Voice America Business Network that broadcasts in 28 countries. That's just awesome. I cannot wait to dig into this. And Steve is a native Texan who brings over 25 years of leadership in nonprofits and 23 years in the corporate world. He catalyzes transformation, empowering leaders to reach their fullest potential. And last but not least, we have Ernelita, who has thrived in healthcare for over a decade and is passionate about personal growth. She has transformed from a shy introvert into a confident introvert and now mentors on confidence and personal development. Steve and Ernie, thank you for being here. I'm loving it, and I appreciate you making the time.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. We have been so excited about being on the show. It's been something that we've looked forward to for quite some time. It really has been.
Me too. That's a good start.
Yeah.
Yes, I do agree. It's actually something that we don't get a lot of being a guest on the radio show. We are hosts of the radio show, so having a guest or being a guest is something that we always
different dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah, we've only had a handful because we are normally the ones interviewing instead of being interviewed.
I've started doing more guest appearances, and there is this weirdness of wait. Don't ask questions, give answers.
Yes, exactly.
That's what we're going to do today.
Exactly. That's what we're going to do today.
Well, before we get into answers and more details about how to broadcast your next big idea, whether it's a radio show, podcast, just broadcasting it, I'd love to hear your story. It's been, from our last conversations, my take on it at least, it's been a whirlwind over the last year or so.
Oh, my gosh.
And I just love it. How and why did you get into broadcasting at the level you're at?
Oh, gosh. Mark, and I'm going to let Ernie take the lead on this, but I'll just start out. We didn't. We had no clue this is what we were going to do. We had absolutely no clue. And so it was something that is kind of like we dipped into. We kind of touched into it. It just kind of came upon us. And it wasn't something that we really planned to do. And Ernie was, and I have been I guess, business partners for a little bit now. But when we got into this thing, it just was something we didn't plan to do. It wasn't, and not at all.
Yeah, in our tandem, so Steve, it's weird for me to call him Steve. I call him partner. So partner Steve is the dreamer. I am the implementer. And it all started with just an idea of doing a webinar, to be honest with you. Him and I met at an International Maxwell Conference in 2022. And after that, we connected. We hosted masterminds. We call them masterminds. So it's basically a class of individuals with talking about the same idea and putting our own 2 cents on them. Hence, it's called a mastermind. So when you put everyone's idea together, you have this collective knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the start of the journey. And Mr. Steve Steele here said we should do a webinar. Well, we both did not know how to do a webinar, let alone how to start one. But honestly, at first, I thought he was kidding. And I said, oh, okay. And then just moved on. And then afterwards, he said again, Ernie, we should really do a webinar. And I was like, well, do we know how to do a webinar? And maybe we should meet about this, because how are we going to put this together? Long story short, we launched the webinar January of 2023.
Right.
Along with that, the reason why we wanted to do a webinar is with the intention to pour knowledge onto people. That's just it. We are not doing it because there's an ulterior motive. It's just we have the passion to add knowledge into others, just like how you do it, right? You talk about the how-tos and different subjects. So with us, we want to talk about leadership and personal development, and that's just exactly what we did. So John Maxwell said, "You will never be good the first time."
Right.
And we're not. We were
It's
not.
really-
But at the end of the day, it's a matter of going towards that and taking one step at a time to get you closer to where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, and Ernie's absolutely right. It was an amazing journey, and like she said, it was something we just jumped into, and was something we just started to do because we had a passion to add value to other people. That was a passion for me, and I always dreamed about doing something where I could hit a larger volume of people to add value to them. So for me, that's what it was, and connecting with Ernie was the thing that made it work.
Well, let's talk about the first steps for people watching, listening in, as far as aspiring podcasters, radio show hosts. They got a big idea they want to share. I love what you just touched on. You connected the passion of yours to adding value to the audience, which is not just like, oh, look at me, look at me. You got to do something different to add value. As far as step one to get ready to try and have an endeavor like this, what did you do? What would you suggest other people do to plan for it? Because you don't just turn on a microphone and boom, you have a show.
Right. No, it's not something you just actually planned for. And when we decided to do the webinar, it was something that we had a desire to. And if you have a passion, if you have a burning in your heart to do something that you want to help other people, and I will tell you this, it comes when you're serving other people. That's when the passion really hits. It's when you have this yearning inside of you that you want to serve other people to whatever capacity that is. When you tap into that passion and you tapped into the giftedness that God is giving you, things begin to roll, things begin to happen, and you don't know all the direction it's going to take. You just keep walking that step forward each single time. What do you think, Ernie?
I do agree. And I think the first step for us is making a decision.
Yeah.
Because hosting a radio show, hosting a podcast, full transparency, it's not easy. A lot of times, based on statistics, it takes 3 episodes and somebody gives up. Now, the first decision that you need to make is, are you willing to do the work
Right.
to
Exactly.
continue the radio show? It takes one decision.
Yeah. And you have to ask yourself, Mark, is this really work? If it's my passion, if it's something that I really want to do, if it's something I want to serve other people with, you find out that the work really doesn't become work. It becomes your passion. It becomes your service. It becomes what you want to do. So although Ernie and I have worked really hard, there are times when we've enjoyed it because of the fact that we're doing it because we're helping other people. And it's not because something that we're trying to receive or get. And I think that's the first step. I think the first step, you need to do something that you're passionate about, that you could care less whether you ever got paid a dime to do it, or if your time no matter how much time you put into it, is something that you really, really want to do. So that's the decision that Ernie's talking about that you have to make.
Well, for the first few episodes, what did the prep, instead of prep work, we'll call it prep passion.
Yeah,
what did that
I
look
like
like?
that.
Just as far as people expect, like, I think I might want one, but what does it look? What do you do to get off the ground? What does that entail?
Ooh, my goodness. So decision making, right, is the first step. Now, obviously, you have to get closer. At the very beginning, a lot of times we don't know what to do, right? But I mentioned earlier, you have to get closer. So what is the next step? Acknowledge what is needed for you to put on the radio show. What do you need? Content, right? So how are you going to put that content together? Are you going to put it together with us, Steve and I, either put it together just the two of us or with a guest? So again, that's the aspect of it. You have to know the next step. And a lot of times we think, oh, I don't have anybody that I know to put content with me. I don't have any content. I don't know what content to put. No, put a content that you're very passionate about. I'm sure, if you're somebody who's starting and say, oh, I want to do a podcast or a radio show, but I don't know what to do, what content to put. Well, what do you love to talk about all day without even thinking about it? Then put your passion into that. That is your content.
I totally agree. Mark, this thing about podcasts and radio shows and webinars, I had this vision years ago. I talked to people that I worked with at that time. I'd like to do a podcast. We need to put a podcast together. Years ago, I talked to these people. It didn't happen because I didn't put forth the effort. I really didn't know which direction I wanted to go. I had a dream. I had an idea what I wanted to do, but I didn't have the people to do it with. I didn't have all. And so when I finally realized that I had to make a decision, that I had to move forward, that's when things began to happen. And what's crazy, Mark, is when we started doing the webinar, the radio show wasn't even a glimpse. Yeah. Yeah. It just didn't happen. All of a sudden, one day, I get a call out of the blue, and it's Voice America. And Voice America says, hey, we're watching some of your content on the webinar. We're interested in talking to you about doing a leadership. They don't have anything like that. They have business, but they didn't have anything in leadership growth. We're interested in talking to you about that. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. I like that. But you have to know, I have a co-host, and they love that idea. That really was a great thing, because then when I began to explain to them yes, Ernie, when I began to explain to them the dynamics between Ernie and I, Ernie and Ernie's more of the millennial type. I'm more of the boomer type, and her being female, me being male, her being Filipina, me being Texas boy from the South.
I'm going to say white.
Yeah, white. Yeah, white Texas boy from the South. That's the different dynamic. And so they're like, that blew them up. They said, wow, we need to really talk about that. So we got Ernie on, and it started. But when we set out to do the dream at the beginning, we didn't have a clue. But as we move forward, step by step, things begin to happen. And they just do. But you have to have a passion for it.
Well, the passion's important, but talk a little bit about you have to somehow match it up with the target market. And I'm guessing there's some kind of, I mean, maybe it was you, Ernie, because I know you do more of the tactical things. But just because you're passionate doesn't mean you're going to have an audience. Do you have to find an audience? Is there a test market is there even an audience for this? What does it look like? It's like I'll connect to my passion, but where the heck's the audience?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's something that you have to decide for yourself, right? Sometimes you want to figure everything out the very first get-go, but in all reality, there's a ton of content out there and them saying, find your niche, find your niche. When you're starting, you don't know your niche. And full transparency, when you're starting, you don't know your niche, but you have an idea. What we have learned in our journey is find the people who used to be like you. Mm-hmm. And with Steve and I, obviously our age difference is a little bit long. So our niche are those seasoned in that journey of us starting the radio show and continuing the webinar. Our niche became seasoned leaders who want to improve their skills, and at the same time, uprising leaders, the next generation leaders who want somebody that they can look up to on how to lead. And that's incorporating personal development within their journey. Because what we teach is not just adding value to people. What we teach is also incorporating leadership with personal growth. When we say leadership, it does not mean you're a part of an organization, you're leading people and you're telling them what to do. That's not how leadership is. It's a matter of incorporating learning, leadership, and at the same time adding personal development so that you can lead the next generation properly and effectively. So as far as niche, that's what we focus on. Seasoned leaders who wants to continue their leadership growth, and at the same time, uprising leaders that would like to become an effective leader for the next generation. Exactly. So you will find that along the way. Do not focus on finding your niche today or focusing on a niche. You will find that along the way.
Well, when you find it along the way and the show starts going, and we've spoken a little bit about this, but could you give some interviewing tips? Because it's so much more than just, at least I get it. Some people can pull off the same 10 questions every episode. I'm against it, but some people do it. God bless them for doing that. Yes. Short of those few people, what tips do you have for would-be interviewers? Because it's a skill set and it takes time to build.
Jeez. Wow. I mean, it really does. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it really does. And I'll be really honest and transparent again. And I want everyone to understand, we did not know how to do this when we started. We just didn't. I'm just being as transparent as possible. We had a dream. We had a desire. So we studied about it. I went to other radio shows. I went to other podcasts. I listened to tons and tons and tons and tons of podcasts. I would emulate how people would interview another person. I love Ed Milet. I love Simon Sinek. I listen to these guys. I listen to the interview processes going on. And I'm thinking, okay, I have got John Maxwell. He's interviewed. I would listen to how he was interviewed. What type of questions would be? I studied it, Mark. I worked at it. That's how I got where I got to be a better interviewer. And then the practice of doing it over and over and over and consistent, Mark. You cannot do anything well unless you're consistent. Don't ever underestimate the compounding effect of consistency. That's John Maxwell. Never underestimate. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you will never be good at it the first time.
What are your thoughts on that, Ernie?
I do agree. It's a matter of doing your own research. And at the same time, and we've done it with you, you've done it with us. Our theme, there's a theme. Obviously, when you're starting something, there's always a theme, right? Ours is personal development and leadership. So you have to kind of shape the content within that theme. All of our guests are vetted. We don't just jump in and, you know something, let's get you on the show. We talk. That's why work comes. We actually hop on a call with our guests and ask them. We have to ask them a few questions about what content are they very passionate about, if it aligns with the theme of the radio show. So when we did all of our research, we made a decision that we don't want the radio show to be boring and have the same questions, 10 questions along the way. It's going to be different content every time, and that's how we can relate. We want the radio show to be raw, authentic, and honest. There's a deeper meaning to the radio show itself. So everyone that we have on the radio show has the same DNA as us, which is adding value to others. Now, the content in itself is all about leadership and personal development. And that's how we capture the data from our guests. We would ask them questions and the content that they're very passionate about. Now, there's obviously different guests who likes everything structured. Personality type. They love everything, all the questions written, and then they will answer accordingly. Or there are some guests, like, I don't know, Mark Carter, potentially, will be, will have a theme, and then we'll capture questions from there. It's a matter of knowing your guests at the same time, and then catering the questions based on the content that they're very, very passionate about.
Absolutely. They got to have our same DNA. We're just not going to put anybody out there who doesn't have the DNA that we have, adding value to others, serving other people, and on leadership and personal growth. It's just got to be there.
So is the DNA, is that the end all be all? It's in the DNA, or do you have other criteria as far as with guests, as far as speaking, interviewee style, speaking style, whatever you want to call it, or is it just DNA?
To be honest with you, that's a DNA, because a DNA connotates to our values.
That's right. It does.
So how do you vet them on a call? Is it almost like a pre-interview? What does that call look like when you're vetting somebody?
It's a pre-interview call wherein we get to know the guests themselves, but we are at a stage, and you will get to this eventually, right? When you're starting, you will get to a stage where people who knows people, and they will refer potential guests for you. They vetted that guest, and then it just makes it easier from there. But the vetting process is we ask them why do they have a passion of adding value to people, or is it something that they are very passionate about? During the call, you can tell by the way they answer the questions. You can tell by the way they say, okay, well, the first question is, tell us a little bit about you. What are you currently doing? How are you doing your business, whatever the business is, right? So it just comes along the conversation of knowing genuinely what their intentions are. So once that process is done, then we will schedule the call for the radio show. And then at the same time, before the radio show itself, 1 week prior to the radio show, we schedule a call with the guests to hone in the content, finding out what really is something that they want to talk about for the length of the radio show. So that's the vetting process. But again, at the end of the day, it's a matter of having that conversation, because there's a ton of, and this is nothing against anyone, there's a ton of content or data today that can be written by AI, right? You can have this amazing resume or amazing website, whatever the case is, but it's a matter of having that connection on Zoom, because obviously we're international. It's having that connection and learning that that person can actually handle questions, can be on the radio show confidently, and with the full intention of just really adding value to people. It's something that we definitely prioritize and look for.
Now, have we had guests that we have vetted and or went through the vetting process and we didn't put on the show? Yes, we have. And and that part is there. But we also have when that happens, and it honestly, we kind of, here's how it works. It's not who I know. It's who do I need to know that you know, Mark. That's what it is for me, right? That's what it is for me. Because if Mark knows this person, and I know Mark, and I trust Mark, then this next person that I'm going to talk to has already been vetted. Wow, your process goes down some, right? All I got to do is do a meet and greet. It's like you have a question.
Yeah, with that, as far as going through people to have them vetted, I completely agree with that. And speak a little bit more to it. I know there's guests I have criteria as far as how long they've been in, just because we're going to, just like we're doing now, we're going deep, we're doing it fast, we're covering a lot of ground. There's a lot of how to. And I know, like, one example, someone I had on the show was only 3 years experience in business, but he came through the same person introduced us. So it was vetted.
Oh, yeah.
So it opens the doors to more guests. Because if he would have come to me by himself, it would be, no, you don't have enough experience. But he was vetted. Boom, guest on the show.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, but this still doesn't prevent us from having a meet and greet and talking to him as well, because I want to get to know that person. Here's the thing. I want to hear them. I want to see them, but more, I want to feel who they are. And I can, when we're having that conversation, when we laugh, just like with you, Mark, when we met, it was like we'd known each other for, I don't know how long, years. And it was just a magical thing that happened. But it's so much about, people that that because when they come to you and you're ready to go on the show, they've already been vetted by the person that you already know. And it all of a sudden that vetting process really kind of changes somewhat. And it's more of a meet and greet. Hey, I've heard a lot about you. These things tell us a little about what you're doing, instead of the questions of how long you've been doing this, what is your niche? What do you do? We already know, Mark, before we got on air with you, that who you were and what you did. And it was all because of who we knew. So it's always going to be, who do you know that I need to know? That's how the process works.
Oh, that's gold. Who do you know that I need to know? Who do you know that I need to know? That's
exactly.
Yes.
So, Mark, who do you know that Ernie and I need to know? And from there, the vetting process starts. And it is already halfway done because of the credibility that we have together in our relationship with you.
This is awesome. Let's keep this going with.
Yeah.
As far as looking back now, where you are coming up on your year and you're rocking it, 28 countries. Looking back now, what are a couple of the biggest lessons you've learned that you look back and go, whoa, that was a whopper. I didn't see that one coming. Not necessarily bad. It could be something you just naturally did good. But what are a couple of the biggest lessons learned looking back?
What did we not learn?
What did we not learn, right?
It's going back to it. I guess the learning piece also comes with the benefit and the aha moments that we've received along the way. Yeah. So the goal of it is just to add value to people, right? But we didn't know that there's an extension and there's a deeper sense to it. Along the way, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know who to get, how to get them. We didn't know what the content is. But what I have learned in the journey is the more you do things, the more opportunities open up, right? and the more amazing people you will meet.
Mhm.
So part of it is meeting amazing people that I thought I would never meet.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Making a difference, having a major motivation that it may seem impossible to you, but someone has done it and did it beautifully. One perfect example is I have a passion of making a difference in my country, which is Philippines. I came from the Philippines. I do have an accent, and I was very transparent at the very beginning of the radio show,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But within that journey, the passion that I have was impossible. The passion that I wanted to achieve for my country was impossible. But as we get exposed with amazing guests who has done it, because you don't share the how-tos while you're doing it. You share the how-tos once you have a leg
Right.
door, right?
Beautiful.
No one has
Beautiful.
ever
Beautiful.
shared a how-to with okay, this is how you do it, but have you done it? No. But unfortunately today we share our passion to people who has never done it, and then they give you their amazing idea that you should not do it because they've never done it, and the notion, the mindset was their mindset, not your mindset. Anyway, I was going away. So if it wasn't for the radio show, and if it wasn't just moving forward to where we are passionate about, I would have never met this amazing woman of making a difference in Cambodia, bringing women from another country to the United States.
Mm. That's the show that got me. I mean,
let me make that deeper.
Yeah.
Bringing sex trafficking victims from Cambodia, bringing them to the United States, training them leadership skills, bringing them back to Cambodia so that those women can educate other women in Cambodia. How is that possible? Like, how is that possible? She has no relation to those girls. She brings them here in the United States, knowing that customs, immigrations, and laws are in place, training them here for 6 weeks. You have to worry about lodging, food, resources, and then bringing them back to that country. See, those are the things that we don't see until we actually expose ourselves with opportunities. And then people who will motivate you is going to be on that other side of the road. I don't know.
Exactly. And Ernie, also now knowing that this next year, we're going to Cambodia. We're going to do the show in Cambodia because we've been invited to do that. And it's like, we never thought we'd get those opportunities, right? We never dreamed of those opportunities. It wasn't even in our mind. All we wanted to do was add value to someone. That's all we wanted to do. But I will tell you, that show, for me, you asked what the question was,
lessons
what have you
learned.
Yeah, what have you learned? For me, I found out very quickly how emotional I can get because I'm being very real. I'm going to be very real here, Mark.
Yeah.
I found out really quick how emotional I could get when we talk about Ernie's laughing because she knows it's true. Because I don't know how many times I've been on with a guest and they told their story, and I just lost my stuff in these interviews. And I'm like, I mean, when we interviewed the lady that works in Cambodia, it just drove a deep, deep, penetrating stake in my heart saying, I have got to do something. I've got to get over there. I've got to make a difference somehow and help this lady. I mean, that's the kind of attitude. I mean, that was inspired in me. And that's the whole reason of the Leader's Edge, to inspire people to move forward, and inspire people to take a hold of their life and just not live their life, but lead their life. Yeah.
And we're learning along the way.
We are.
There's things that we learned that we would have never learned without doing the radio show.
Oh my gosh.
How to handle certain things, how to when a person drops off on air and
what happens then?
How would you handle that? How would you continue on?
What about if your host drops off on air? That happened to me about 3 weeks ago.
On air.
Ernie was on the show. Off? I did. Ernie was on the show by herself for like 10 minutes.
On the show by myself with the guests.
Well, to reinforce everyone, this is a live show. This is not Facebook, you can just edit in a recording.
Exactly. It is. It's a live show. We go live every single week. And I think we've maybe done 2 pre-records, Mark, in the 50 some episodes we've done. They've been live every week. So what you see is what you hear, I guess is better, is what you get because it's live. And so but it was amazing because it just seemed like I just dropped off for about a second and then I came back on. I'm like, okay. But those moments are scary. You know, if a guest drops off and then all of a sudden just me and Ernie, or for us on Voice America, we're very fortunate to be one of the top 1% of shows on. There's like 300 shows on Voice America. We're in the top 1% that have live callers that call in. We had as many as 4 live callers call in on one show. Now that takes up a lot of time on a show, you know, and so it does. So, but you don't know what you're getting when you get that too. Now we've got a little bit of a process with our engineers. They know exactly what we're looking for and stuff like that. But it is a different dynamic when you have a live caller come in on the show, you know.
Well, there's a lot of lessons learned, and I'd like to come back to, in light of what we were just talking about, what you've learned. You kept going. You do a weekly live show. How do you maintain? Because that's something that I dropped the ball on when I started podcasting. It was sporadic. Now it's weekly. How do you maintain? What tips would you have? Actually, just your stories too. How do you maintain consistency? Because so many people with podcasts and radio don't. How did you do it? How do you do it?
Ooh. Go ahead, partner.
Well, you have to be respectful of your calendar. Mm-hmm. When we say consistency, when you were coherent to schedule something on your calendar, follow that through. That's how you stay consistent. Sometimes when we do things and you're like, you don't feel like doing it, and you're like, oh, it's okay, I can do it tomorrow. No, you have it on your calendar for a reason. Do it today. Yes, one of the things that we have learned throughout the process is, in order to have the confidence in ourselves, we also have to keep the promises that we make for ourselves. And this is the missing piece, right? You don't have a radio show and then just say you have a radio show. Like I said, the first step is have a decision that you will do whatever it takes. You have to make that decision. Now, once you're in the process, you also have to keep the promises that you put in yourself. I have learned this quote a long time ago. Do not make the calendar work. You make the calendar work for you. So when you say your calendar, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. No, schedule intentionally on your calendar and follow them as you schedule them for yourself. So that's where the discipline and the consistency happens. It's a matter of following through, even though you don't feel like it, because there will be days when you don't feel like it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think, Ernie, you keyed on a key word there, and that's the word intentional. Everything that we do, everything, now listen closely, everything that Ernie and I do together is intentional. As far as the radio show is concerned, it is all intentional. It's planned intentional. We follow through intentionally, and we take it clear to that last moment that we go off the air. It's intentional. Everything is intentional, and that's how we have to operate. If we don't operate that way, we're guesswork. And Ernie knows me well enough. I can't work in that environment of guessing what's going to happen next. I need to have a plan. Now, my plan may not go the way that I want it to. I might have to pivot and shift, but that's okay. As long as I've got a goal out there that I'm trying to accomplish. And you have to learn, to trust yourself. You have to learn to trust yourself, understand yourself enough to know, and if you're working with a co-host like Ernie, got to trust Ernie. Got to trust her. Got to know that she's
trust each other, not just Ernie. We trust each other.
Exactly. But I've got to put that out there. I've got to say, okay, if Ernie's not responding for some reason, I've got to trust the fact that she's responding in another way, or she's going to make it happen in another way. I've got to do that. And your viewers don't realize this, but I'm in Texas and Ernie is in California. So we don't see each other on a person-to-person basis every day. We get on Zoom calls just about every day. We see each other, I guess, live. I guess that's a word to say. I don't know, but we see each other in real time. We see each other once or twice a year, and that's about it.
Well, I like the word you just used. I'd love to unpack this more because I agree with you 100%. Intentional.
Mhm.
Unpack that. How are you intentional? Because you touched on it, but I think there's a deeper well there to look at.
There is.
Okay.
Take it, Ernie. This is your arena, Ernie.
When you say intentional, that's taking into account everything else that's happening in your life, personally, professionally, emotionally, or mentally, if you want to put it that way. So when you, let's say, I do Steve and I have our unspoken tandem, right? I handle the logistics, he handles the content, and being on the radio show, and basically just the presence itself. So when you're intentional, we have this hidden language that my schedule fits his schedule. And anything beyond that is obviously not irrelevant, but outside of the availability itself. So intentionality, meaning you're cognizant of the other person, you're cognizant of everything else that's happening on the back end, you're cognizant of your schedule itself. We just had a guest a couple of weeks ago, and with him, he said you have to have self-accountability when you're doing things. So that's touches intentionality. When you say you would do something, you made an intention to do it for a reason. You may not voice it out, but there's a reasoning behind it. Now, when you don't do it, it then reduces integrity.
Right.
Right. Let's say, like, this is a perfect example, Mark. When we say we will be on this and on your show today, and we don't show up on time, we made an intentional decision that we will be on your show. But if we don't show up on time, then the intention loses its integrity because we don't show up. So the intention itself is having that decision making. You were coherent at the time when you made the decision that you will do it. Be intentional about it, but taking into account everything else around you, all the noise around you. But the missing pieces, are you going to follow through with that intention that you had? So there's a difference, right? There's good intentions and there's being intentional. Good intention is you say you will do it and not do it. Being intentional is you actually are taking action.
That's right.
Of whatever it is that you made a decision to do.
Now, let me flip the backside a little bit. Are there those times when Ernie and I schedule a time together, an appointment together, or something, and we have to break that appointment? Yes. But breaking the appointment is intentional. It's on purpose. There's a reason behind it. Yeah. It's not because we just say, we're going to go to the movies tonight. We just don't want to meet. There's sacrifices that you make. I mean, there are things that you do that you, for this, there's never going to be a moment in life when you want to do something like this that you're not going to make some type of sacrifice, but it's different for every person. But yeah, I mean, even the times I think we had a scheduled call last night, Ernie, I think it was, and Ernie had a really tough day. She had a real difficult day. She asked me, she's partner, can we reschedule this? Yes, of course we can. We don't just have to be rigid and say, no, we got to stay on our intentional schedule. But when we intentionally change it on purpose for a reason, then it goes right back into the marks of, okay, this is an intentional situation. So intentionality is huge. It really is. And John Maxwell has a law he wrote in the 15 Laws of Invaluable Growth. And he said, it's called the law of intentionality. And it says, growth doesn't just happen.
No,
it has to be intentional. So anything you do, whether you want to do a podcast, whether you want to do a radio show, whether you want to do a TV show, it has to be intentional, because in the intentionality, in that moment is where the growth takes place.
Well, it sounds like, that's important. And we've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. So individually, the last question I have for each of you, we're talking about broadcasting a big idea. Like I said, a lot of ground, a lot of stuff, whether it's reiterating and reinforcing something you've said or something you haven't touched on yet. If you're going to tell someone interested in doing this, you know what? If above all, at least, if nothing else, do this. Stick with this. What would you tell them to do? We'll start with Steve.
Yeah, it's got to go back for me. It's got to be consistency. If you're going to do something, if you're going to be intentional and you're going to do something and you want to make a difference, the only way you can ever make a difference. I mean, Mark, think about it for a second. How do you get really good at something? Let's see.
Practice.
Just practice, right? You have to do it over and over and over. The first radio show we had, it was horrible. We weren't good. We weren't good.
We are cringing.
And if you want to, you can actually go back and listen to it in the archives. We weren't good. It was tough.
Right.
We're concerned about it. We actually had our producer on with us that day, and to kind of give us a little bit of an edge. But we were good. But as we move forward, as we began to intentionally grow, we got better at it, and we got better at it, and we got better. And today we're not perfect. We have we have so much more fun with it, because if something does happen, we know how to just flip the switch and make it go work for us, right? So you learn it as I go. But
awesome.
It's got to be in consistency. It has got to be consistency. You must stay consistent, and that consistency will compound over a period of time.
And how about you, Ernie? What would you say, if above all else, this one thing is the most important for broadcasting a big idea, doing what we're talking about? What would you say that one thing would be?
I would do the same. I would say the same exact thing as my partner said. Just do it, and do it one step at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's just a matter of taking 1%, improving 1% every day. And by the time the year ends, you have improved 365%, and that's all you needed.
That's all you need.
Start again the next year.
Yep.
This has been awesome. If people want to find you online, where's the best place to go?
We have a Facebook page called The Leader's Edge, or you can actually go through our own website. Mine is confidentlyu.club, and partner your website growth.
Yeah, it's Maxwell Leadership. I don't have it right in front of me. I can't quote it exactly.
It's Maxwell Leadership Certified Team / growth
Thank
and
you.
leadership, Steve Steele.
You see how I mean? How she takes care of me?
Nice. Well, thank you both again for the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Mark, it's been a pleasure. I love this. I actually love this. This is a thing that I love to do. I love to share. And if anything that we can do to help anyone out there, plug into us. We would love to share and help in any way we can. Ernie and I are both certified coaches. We're both motivational speakers. We both work on corporate leadership, go into corporate leadership and work. If you need any help at all, we'd love to go into your culture, your environment, and just share the knowledge that we have.
And on that note, thank you very much.